What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Howdy.
You guys all hear that?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. What's up? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Kowalski from Nebraska.
Hello, Kowalski. What would you like to talk about today, buddy?
I would just like to say I have called in every day you've been on the show, excluding two. So I don't know if that's like a record, but I've made an effort of it.
Why, thank you. Wonderful.
We appreciate it.
Question that I didn't. Yeah, I have a question. Did feel like asking it to Sam because I think I would get a 20-minute lecture. So I'm going to take a very unpopular opinion, and I just want to see if my logic makes sense. So clearly, we don't like the Electoral College because it gives disproportionate representation to the smaller states and disproportionate legislature representation as well, right?
Yeah, and apparently there's some funny business that they can do with it.
Well, okay, but the electors should have to follow whatever the voters decide, but wouldn't it be more advantageous to achieve the political goals that we all have if we just simply won over the smaller states? Like the Upper Great Plains in general used to be a fairly, progressive place, and we don't have the racial baggage that the old South has. So, I mean, it would be fairly cheap to win over the area's materialist conditions, while at the same time giving you disproportionate power in the Senate and the ability to take the White House easier.
So I got a couple things. One, I largely agree with you, definitely more than Sam would, that this is a strategy that is capable of winning. I think had Obama and the Democrats actually taken care of people's health care, with Wisconsin wouldn't even be in play anymore, for instance. Like, I think those sorts of states. That said, I don't know about the racial baggage stuff. I was in North Dakota a few weeks ago, a month or so ago, and that's a state that didn't exist before during the Civil War and existed after Reconstruction. In fact, guess what? There's a lot of racial baggage still there, and a lot of people that are MAGA, basically fascists. And so I think like that is a huge real base in those states. But I do think a Democratic Party that actually like took care of healthcare, because in rural areas, like I think healthcare is a massive issue just as it is in urban areas. Like, and the Democrats are leaving that on the table because they're bought by the private insurance industry to not go there. And I think if they weren't and were actually capable of it, they could compete in those states too. Because like you said, I mean, North Dakota for most of my early lifetime had 2 Democratic senators. They weren't great. Conrad sucked. Byron Dorgan was good though. Byron Dorgan raised alarm about financial deregulation in the mid 2000s. And so like it's totally possible to get those people to vote blue. But I would stop my agreement upon saying that there isn't racial baggage there, because I think that is like the new sort of like Bavaria for Hitler. Like I honestly think because they haven't dealt with some of that stuff, it's almost even worse in places like Minnesota.
I think I might have phrased this poorly. Okay. I'll agree with you that there are definitely people out here that are like that. Like clearly we've been around them, but what I mean is it's not as prevalent as a social issue as it would be in the old South. Like you're probably never going to be able to win over places like Alabama, without having like just overwhelming material benefits for it. But my thing is that the Upper Great Plains is a fairly cheap area. As far as like political capital goes, it would be one of the cheapest places to get, and it would be one of the biggest returns on investment you could get, because you're talking, 20% of the Senate and only like maybe 10 million people. So it wouldn't be hard to improve those material conditions, get the people you want, and then have a disproportionate say in government. I view that as a much easier strategy than trying to eliminate the Electoral College, just because I do not see why any small state would ever give up its political advantage. Like, I would almost say that would be like probably something nobody would ever do to their constituents. Like, we're going to actively surrender more power for principle. Like, I just don't see that ever happening.
Yeah.
And
Well, look.
I mean, like I said, it would just be cheaper to win the area and then use that as a springboard for the rest of the country.
And one thing that I just want to say quick that backs up your attitude is there's definitely a difference between Southern and, like, for instance, in rural exurban white voters for Texas, Trump is beating Biden 80-60. In Iowa, it's 45
80 to 16. 80 to 16.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 80-16. Yeah, and in Georgia, it's 82-14. Biden in Iowa is 45-42. And it's true that, like, even if you look at the map for Obama in Wisconsin in 2008, he crushed in the rural areas as well. Like those people can turn out for Democrats, or at least you can drive the margin down enough to where the big city areas, take the state for you. I think there's something to that. I think it's probably I don't know what's easier, changing the Electoral College or getting the Democrats to run on something like universal health care. I don't know.
Both pretty difficult.
I personally wouldn't leave it up to Democrats. I would say, like, that should just be something progressive, like the Caucus should make, like, a goal, just because there's a lot of money, in the coastal areas. So trying to win those would be very expensive. But, like ethanol, that is by definition big government. It's widely popular. And I just honestly think if you can win over people on material conditions and then have a very aggressive advertising campaign saying, like, we won this for you.
I mean,
I think that would go quite a long way.
I've recently seen pushes to even, if you work from home and you live in a big city, why don't you move to one of these states? And I mean, that's how far people are thinking about this in terms of weighing the option of what's more likely: changing the Electoral College, moving tens of thousands of people to one of these states from a more liberal blue state. Just getting the Dems to. Or just getting the Dems to support popular.
California could just threaten to send millions of its citizens across the Great Plains unless they vote Democrat now.
Listen, if the Democratic Party wants to pay to move me and my family to one of these states, and they will pay for our housing, I'll be happy to move to, like,
the Steyer
Iowa
Homesteader Act
or North Dakota, or send me. All expenses paid, and I will be one extra Democratic vote every election year.
Well, Bloomberg's already throwing his money around in Florida, so maybe it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to having a Binder Homestead. I don't know. Right. I mean, I feel like we can do both of these things, right? I say we, like, I'm very invested in the Democrats, but the Democrats should certainly be trying to win over rural states. They should be trying to win every state. And I think you're correct in identifying that people with less of an attachment to white supremacy will be more winnable on material conditions. I don't know how that plays out in the Great Plains. I'm not a Great Plainsologist like Matt Leck here. But in the long term, the Electoral College still got to go. I mean, all of it's got to go. But
fundamentally, we should be, if we had, like, full power and, like, AOC was, leader of the Senate or whatever the hell, like, in, like, 2030.
So you guys got to read your Lenin, because once you have the Great Plains, that's when you will have the political power to get the change you want.
Hey, look, I think there's something to that.
Are you making a play for Nebraska, Kowalski?
Kowalski, you got to deliver us Nebraska, though.
Are you are you making a play for Nebraska? Are you planning some sort of political coup where you get to be the king of Nebraska and dictate policy to the rest of the country from your highfalutin seat atop a corn tower? Or a grain silo?
Okay, you weren't supposed to tell everyone that. But hey, Nebraska is the closest state in the union that has a parliament, so we're a little more democratic than the rest of you.
Yeah, that's true.
And we split our electoral college based on our congressional district. So if the second district, people in Omaha, your vote really, really matters this go around. Don't forget that.
There you go. All right. Well, he sold us. There we go.
I look forward to welcoming our hey chomping overlords.
Yeah. All right, Kowalski, thanks for the call.
All right, everyone stay safe out there. Bye.
You too. Take care. I like how once Jamie and I saw where this conversation was headed, we just were like, "Yeah, Matt's got this. Matt Lex got this one." Bad news for anyone who IM'd us in the first half of the show. I accidentally refreshed the page and lost all your IMs. So